There's a massive issue in Puerto Rico when it comes to public health. There's a public health crisis, and a lot of it has to do with not having enough specialists or doctors that live in Puerto Rico. For example, my mom, to get a doctor's appointment with a specialist, would have to wait 6-7 months to get an appointment. There's also hospitals closing, health insurances aren't paying the hospitals. There's a lot going on. So while I was growing up in Puerto Rico, I grew up with a sick dad who was diagnosed with cancer when I was very young. So I knew hospitals and knew the system from a very young age and saw all of the limitations and barriers and hardships that we experience to receive care. We all want what's best for us, for our families, for our friends. So seeing what's going on in Puerto Rico, I feel like I need to have the tools to tackle it in the best way possible. It's just an area where I feel like I can have an impact. And a lot of the issues I'm describing happen everywhere. Health insurance is a limitation for a lot of people throughout the United States. Hospitals close through the United States. If you live in rural areas, getting doctor's appointment might also be very difficult. So I'm anchoring what makes it personal in Puerto Rico just because that's close to me and that's where I feel like I have more of a connection. But I think this really does translate to everyone.
Hello and welcome everyone to Making Public Health Personal. This podcast is brought to you by the CUNY Graduate School of Public Health and Health Policy in New York City. I'm your host, Laura Meoli-Ferrigon. Thank you for listening. In today's episode, we'll speak to Andrea Isabel Lopez, Project Manager for the Latinx Arts Consortium of New York, and she is a Rita Allen Civic Science Center Fellow with Ciencia Puerto Rico. Andrea recently graduated with her MPH in Community Health from CUNY SPH, and she was a project manager for Harlem Strong with the Center for Innovation in Mental Health at CUNY SPH. Listen into our conversation to find out about Andrea's path to success and her advice for others interested in obtaining and maintaining a lucrative career in public health. We'll also get tips for finding scholarships and fellowships that will maximize your return on investment for graduate school. Andrea, thanks for joining me today.
Thanks so much for the invitation. Happy to be here.
So you have a bachelor's in international relations, citizenship, and civic engagement and Latin American studies from Syracuse University. So what brought you to CUNY SPH?
So as you could probably tell, I have a bunch of different interests and I went a little crazy in undergrad and did 3 bachelor degrees. So when I finished my BA, I always knew I wanted to do a master's, but I felt that a lot of my interests were a little bit all over the place. I liked research. I liked community-focused work. I liked working with nonprofits. I was also very interested in advocacy efforts, but I felt like I needed some time in between degrees to basically work and figure things out. So I was pretty lucky that right after I finished my BA, I was hired as a project assistant at the Puerto Rico Institute of Statistics. And a lot of people I worked with had their master's. I was literally the only one that didn't have a master's degree. So I was in a space where I could just learn a lot from everyone and figure out what I wanted to do, where I wanted to continue. And a lot of the work I was doing was focused on public health and interacting with different community partners and our community advisory board. And public health just seemed like the place where I could put into practice a lot of those interests that seemed to be disjointed at first, but that really communicate and overlapped with each other. So that's why I landed in public health specifically. And what brought me to CUNY was that I knew I didn't want to do a master's in the School of Puerto Rico. I knew a lot of people that were like, you should probably apply to places in the United States. And I have friends that live in New York City, so it just seemed like an easier transition than going to a place where I didn't know anyone. But I also felt that being in New York City would give me the space to, yes, learn about different cultures and be exposed to different people, but also still keep a connection to the Latino community and the Puerto Rican community because there's a lot of us in the city.
Yeah.
So it felt like a decent in between. And I also really liked specifically about CUNY because CUNY was like the only program I applied to. Mm-hmm. I really liked that when I went to the website and met with everyone and just saw the offering and requirements, there seemed to be a very strong community engagement emphasis that I didn't necessarily see in the other programs that I was looking at, and that it felt very important and valuable to me. So it just seemed like a natural fit. And I guess the other thing, which is an important consideration, is just the financial burden of pursuing a master's degree. And CUNY is just much more affordable than a lot of the other options.
Definitely a good value. So when did you start working with the Center for Innovation and Mental Health's Harlem Strong? And how did that connection give you opportunities post-graduation?
Yeah, so I started not necessarily working, but interning, collaborating with the center for my capstone project. My concentration for my MPH was community health, and everyone that's a community health that's on that track, we need to do a capstone project, and it's a year-long project. Yes, you're taking a class, but you're partnered with either a research center or organization, and you collaborate with them for the entire year. So the center I was partnered with was the Center for Innovation and Mental Health, specifically their Harlem Strong project. So for that entire year, I worked on a lot of different things, and slowly I got more and more responsibilities. I was first just doing data abstraction for the landscape analysis that they were working on. Then they realized that I was a native Spanish speaker, so I started doing a lot of the translations for their surveys and interviews. Then I started working with them for additional small tasks. And then towards the end of my senior year, once I was about to graduate, I spoke with the center manager about an opportunity that I had seen online for the Mahoney Fellowship. It's from the New York Academy of Medicine. And I was like, oh, I'm interested in applying to this, but I would need to be partnered with an organization. Would you guys recommend me for this? And they were like, yes, that would be awesome, because that way I could stay on with them through the summer. So that gave me additional time to continue to do some of the work that I had already started with them. And then once I finished that fellowship, that's when the funding for the Harlem Strong project kicked in, that the project is funded from the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation and then also an NIH grant. And I was just hired as the manager for the project because I had been basically working with them in some capacity for over a year at that point. So it just seemed like a logical transition because of that capstone project.
So you got your foot in the door. You also built your resume in that last year, and then beyond, you had a job post-graduation. That's great.
Yeah, definitely. That was awesome. And I've always really valued having a space to work on community engagement efforts. So just the project interacting with the different partners, but also having some of that research experience, helping to develop the surveys and being able to rely on my Spanish to get in and do all of those translations. That was also really cool.
If you dream of making a difference in the world, a public health degree or certificate can give you the tools to do just that. The City University of New York's Graduate School of Public Health and Health Policy equips public health professionals to advance not only a healthier New York City, but a healthier world for us all. We want you to join us in our mission. Visit sph.cuny.edu to learn more about our programs. No matter where you are in your career, CUNY SPH offers a broad range of degree and certificate programs to not only help you advance in your career, but to have a real impact on the world. Public health professionals are needed now more than ever. Join us. Visit sph.cuny.edu to learn more.
So tell me about the work you're doing now in Puerto Rico and why that's so close to your heart.
It's close because I'm Puerto Rican. I was born and raised in Puerto Rico.
Of course.
So it's important to me. I think what happens with a lot of us that were born and raised in Puerto Rico but moved to the United States is that between school and work and just life, you end up being more detached to what's happening in Puerto Rico. I was always looking for that opportunity to be able to do something, to stay connected somehow while living in the diaspora. So I am currently a civic science fellow with Ciencia Puerto Rico. It's a nonprofit that's basically the largest network of Latino scientists. And a lot of the work that we do is focused on putting science at the hands and at the service of Puerto Ricans. So I'm currently working with the public engagement unit in a bunch of different things. A lot of it is helping to develop public health campaigns, supporting the work of Ciencia Collab, which is a project that's focused on giving different cohorts of community leaders the tools and funding and support to create different community projects And that was so cool. When I was there in Puerto Rico for the holiday, I was able to participate in some of the events and be interviewed and meet a lot of our community leaders and just see a lot of the work that they're doing. So it's gratifying to know that even though I'm here in the United States in New York, I'm able to have some type of impact in Puerto Rico. I also help to develop materials to train scientists to practice more culturally humble and inclusive science communication. And then it's a nonprofit, so you end up doing all of it, everything, grant writing, everything.
Yeah. All hands on deck. Yep.
Basically.
So you are also the project manager at Latinx Arts Consortium of New York. Can you tell me what you do in your day-to-day current role?
Yeah, so it varies a lot. The Latinx Arts Consortium, or LXNY, our goal is to create this network of Latinx serving organizations, cultural institutions, and have them come together to advocate for our needs and wants and rights as a collective voice. A lot of times organizations kind of work in silos in a way. There isn't really an equivalent to LXNY in the city. So it's been really cool to create these spaces for conversation among the different organizations. And we're doing right now a needs assessment, get a sense of what they need, what are barriers, what are their wants, what should be our next steps. So I've been interacting with a lot of different people in the city. And it's also great to be in a space where I can collaborate with the Latina community in the city. So that's also really cool. When it comes to my day-to-day, it just varies a lot. As the manager, a lot of it is planning longer term, strategizing, making sure that you're talking to everyone. A lot of it is just doing interviews, creating focus groups. And right now we're like doing our 2024 strategy and doing a membership evaluation. That's amazing to do. And I know it's more focused on arts organizations, but a lot of them, our goal is to advocate, because a lot of these organizations, even though they brand themselves as arts focused, they do have public health impact. They do have education services and programs. They do have after school programs and collaborate with food pantries of different organizations. So there's a bigger argument there also about the value of arts and the impact that it can have on mental health and just public health in general.
Definitely. There are a lot of benefits of art in the community. So that's awesome that you're connecting the two.
Definitely. It's honestly been really interesting and cool because you interact with them and they don't see themselves necessarily as advocating for public health or doing public health work. But when you describe it to them in those terms, it's, oh yeah, that's what we're doing. They connect the dots.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's shift and talk about scholarships for a bit for people who are interested in pursuing a master's degree or getting some financial help with their education. So you're the recipient of an NIH research supplement to promote diversity and health-related research programs, which is the Gilman Scholarship and the Correll Scholarship. How did you find those opportunities, and what advice do you have for others interested in getting public health scholarships at the master's or MPH level?
For context, when I was doing my master's, I was also working full-time, and I did that on purpose. One, if you are at CUNY and you are in New York City native, you need to wait a year until you have the tuition for in-state. That gave me the space to have the in-state tuition. So that was one of the financial benefits of having the job. Also, a lot of jobs also give you like X amount of money for classes, additional coursework, or anything. So I was also able to leverage and max out that benefit for my master's. But when it comes to the other opportunities that the New York Academy of Medicine Fellowship or the Correll Scholarship or the Gilman Scholarship, which I got in undergrad, or the NIH Research Supplement, all of that has been through either mentors or people I know. So I think it's very important to be honest about what your goals are with a supervisor, a coworker, because that's the best way that you can learn about the opportunities that are out there. They can nominate you, they can share opportunities, and every single opportunity I've had has been that way. Another thing I really do is if you go to my LinkedIn, it's like super up to date.
Yeah.
Everything is up to date. follow every single foundation, organization, everything. And I do a lot of planning in advance. So for example, when I applied for the Margaret E. Mahoney Fellowship, I knew over a year in advance that I wanted to apply to that because I found it at the New York Academy of Medicine website. I wasn't eligible at the time. I don't remember why I wasn't eligible at the time. I think it had something to do with the timing of where I was in my master's. But I followed them on LinkedIn, put a calendar reminder of when I was going to be eligible to look for all of that information and just follow them everywhere. And that way I was able to stay on top of things. And I mentioned it to the Center for Innovation of Mental Health, like the staff, that I was interested in applying to this. So a lot of it is communication and planning and prepping and tapping into your network, basically. Because really, like any mentor, any supervisor,
Your professors even.
yeah, exactly. Like they'll want the best for you. And if they think you're a good match and if they know that you're interested in that type of opportunity, they'll just share it with you.
It sounds like you're saying networking is very important, whether at work or at school or whatever opportunities that you have at the moment. Networking and also speaking what you want, telling people what you're looking for, and planning in advance and not being discouraged by having to wait, like long-term planning.
Exactly. And I think also something to keep in mind is that, yes, I've gotten these opportunities, but I've applied to others that I just haven't gotten. And that's okay. Maybe I wasn't a great fit at the moment. Maybe I needed to wait an additional year and I just didn't, or whatever the case might be. It's easy to get discouraged when you get a no, but you need to get used to it and not take it personally. Maybe you just weren't a fit for the
It
opportunity.
wasn't meant to be. Yeah.
It just wasn't meant to be, but just look for the next opportunity. And I think that kind of mindset of constantly being on the lookout and challenging yourself in that way is very important and essential to getting these opportunities.
Yeah, and applying a second time if you didn't get it one time, but maybe you're eligible again next year or next semester, like just keep trying.
Exactly.
So what are your future goals now that you have your MPH and some significant experience in public health? What's next for you?
Currently, I just finished applying to PhD programs. Because of my work with Ciencia Puerto Rico, I've been exposed to a lot of communication work, specifically health communication and risk communication. And it hasn't been as focused that I knew I was specifically interested in, but once you're in it, I just see it everywhere. I see the value of communication. I see the value of behavioral science, all of that. Specifically in the context of Puerto Rico, I see the value of becoming a professional in that field and being able to get funding for projects in Puerto Rico and leading projects that are focused on health communication and risk communication for Latinx communities. Hopefully we'll get into any of the programs that I applied to and I'll be able to pursue that career, which might seem a little, I don't want to say disjointed because the degree would be technically communication, but I do think it builds directly from my public health background because that is very much the area of focus that I'm interested in. This might have happened to a lot of people because I did my master's straight through the horrible year that was the pandemic. It really like shifted and shaped what I wanted to do longer term. And it helped me see the value of communication when it comes to not only a pandemic or a crisis moment, but vaccination, how to do exercises, going to your doctor, taking your meds, like smaller actions like that. It's so hard to create that behavioral change in people, and communication plays a massive role in it. So yeah, that's where I see myself growing and becoming more of a professional in that specific area.
You're taking something that happened in the world, and communication has become more important with public health right now because of the pandemic. And you're taking that experience and you're building upon it and adding it to your repertoire. And I think that's great. You know, you're going to have such a specific skill set that like that perfect role is going to be like, you're going to know exactly, oh, this is for me.
I've been talking to a lot of people about this. There's a lot of research around specifically Latino communities and conservative communities and religious communities, which are communities that, when we consider vaccination, for example, don't have the best vaccination rates. But there's no research at that overlap, like conservative Latina communities. I grew up in church. I come from a very conservative family. So there's very much a personal motivation for me to pursue a PhD degree and focus on these topics. So hopefully things will pan out, fingers crossed.
I'm sure they will. So with all that you've learned from your degree, from your experience, what advice do you have for other people who are interested in studying public health?
The first thing that comes to mind is just do it. I don't see why you wouldn't want to do it. To me, it just, at least as a personal thing, it feels like the best fit for me. But the value I see in public health is that it's pretty interdisciplinary in a lot of ways. I think people might put public health into this little box of it's just for the hospitals, or it's just this, or it's just that. But a degree in public health gives you the research background, gives you the policy background. If you want to do more community focused work, it gives you that. If you want to go into journalism, you can have the public health background in there as well. Like it gives you space to grow in like so many different spaces, to go into so many different careers. And I've really learned that not only through my master's, but also in the jobs that I have right now. I don't think my route isn't necessarily traditional. And yes, I've worked in clinical settings and done clinical trials, and I think done what people associate with the sciencey, stereotypical things in public health. But because of my master's and because of my experiences at CUNY, I've been able to translate my background and my training into different job outcomes and tracks that are still very much public health. I'm working in public health campaigns. I'm working with community partners. I'm doing all of that. But I've been able to have a lot of flexibility and adapt the degree to be the best thing for me and to help me grow as a professional.
Yeah, it's opened a lot of doors in your career for sure.
Definitely.
So your career journey kind of reminds me of mine, where although you had that experience already and you could have definitely just went forward with your career as it was going, you decided to take on something that kind of emerged in the world and inspired you. So for me, I was a filmmaker, podcaster, photographer, doing all kinds of media production for a long time, maybe 10 years. And then I started noticing that I was really interested in teaching. And once I really leaned into that and started doing it, instructional design emerged as an interesting subject matter and something where I had an opportunity to go to school for it. When I went for that degree, I didn't really know what it was. I just knew it was about education and learning and how people learn and how you design multimedia and learning materials for people. And so I was interested in kind of melding the two. And I graduated right at the beginning of the pandemic, and then online learning exploded, and that led me to where I am today, where I'm working at SPH doing instructional design, working in the Office of Online Learning, but also using my media production skills to not only create this podcast or create videos, but really take that learning design experience and combine it. And so I'm creating trainings for people to be able to learn through multimedia. So your experience really reminds me of mine, where this new thing is emerging and you're taking your passion and using it to lead your career. And the opportunity will come up that'll be perfect, looking for someone just like you, looking for the exact melding of the experience that you have. So definitely don't feel like it's ever a bad thing to go back to school. It's just adding to your experience and your knowledge.
Definitely, yeah.
Thanks again, Andrea, for being a guest, and thanks for listening to Making Public Health Personal, presented by the CUNY Graduate School of Public Health and Health Policy in New York City. You can now share, like, and subscribe to our show anywhere podcasts are heard and on our YouTube channel. To find out more about our school, you can visit sph.cuny.edu or connect with us on social media. This is your host, Laura Meoli-Ferrigon, signing off. And while public health has a global impact, that doesn't mean we can't make it personal.